There are some cities in America where white people just aren't sticking around anymore, not because of hurricanes, rising housing costs, or even gentrification. No, it's because these cities got a little too black for their taste. And no, this isn't a headline from the 1960s. It's happening right now in 2025. Despite all the talk about progress and equality, there are still places where demographic changes make some people so uncomfortable that they pack up and leave. Why is that? Why do we still see this happening today? Welcome to Explore Tremaine. My name is Mitch, and we're diving into the social issues most people don't want to talk about. Here, we break down the facts, the culture, and the uncomfortable truths that shape our cities and communities. If you're ready for bold conversations that don't hold back, hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Today, we're taking a hard look at white flight, a phenomenon where white residents leave a city when the black population grows significantly. It's about perception and discomfort, not just numbers. When a neighborhood is labeled as too black or too urban, it often leads to a quiet migration trend. People say the place just isn't the same anymore, or call it unsafe, without ever questioning what changed besides the people. In this video, we're breaking down the top 11 cities where this pattern has played out recently. These cities have seen demographic shifts that some see as cultural earthquakes. The real question is whether these cities are truly falling apart, or if it's just fear of change. Ready to get started? Let's go. Number 11, Gary, Indiana. Gary, Indiana, once a thriving steel industry town, had a predominantly white population back in the 1950s. The city was booming, with steady jobs, strong communities, and a sense of stability. But things started to change when the steel industry took a hit. As factories closed and jobs dried up, the demographics shifted dramatically. In 1960, Gary was about 90% white. Today, it's just 11% white and over 78% black. The decline of the steel industry wasn't the only factor. As more black families moved in and started buying homes, white residents moved out. Instead of adapting to a more diverse city, they packed up and left, heading to nearby suburbs like Merrillville and Crown Point. It was like someone hit a panic button. White flight happened fast, and by the 1970s, Gary looked completely different. As white families left, so did resources and investment. Gary became a case study in how racial fear and economic downturn can devastate a city. But let's not pretend it was the black residents who caused the collapse. The city's struggles had everything to do with losing its industrial backbone and the people who refused to coexist in a changing community. Even after decades of disinvestment and media portrayal as a ghost town, Gary is still standing. Black families have remained resilient, building their lives despite the odds. The real question is, did Gary decline because it was abandoned, or was it abandoned because it declined? Is it really fair to blame the city's hardships on the people who stayed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Number 10, Lawrence, Massachusetts. Lawrence, Massachusetts was once a thriving industrial city, bustling with factories and a predominantly white working-class population. During the mid-20th century, things started to change. The factories that once fueled the local economy began to shut down, and the city faced a sharp economic decline. As job opportunities faded, white residents started leaving, looking for a better life in the suburbs. At the same time, Latino immigrants began moving in, drawn by affordable housing and the promise of rebuilding their lives. This demographic shift changed the city's identity almost overnight. Deindustrialization played a major role, but so did racial tensions and the pool of suburban lifestyles. White residents who once called Lawrence home started relocating to nearby towns, where they felt more comfortable. As more Latinos settled in, the public perception of Lawrence shifted too. The city's new identity didn't sit well with everyone, and as more white families left, investment followed. Reduced funding for public services made things worse, and Lawrence was labeled as a struggling city rather than a community in transition. But despite these challenges, the Latino community has continued to shape Lawrence's identity. New businesses are popping up, cultural events are bringing life to the city, and there's a sense of revival led by the very people who stayed. The question is, did Lawrence really decline because of demographic change, or was it simply written off as soon as it looked different? Let me know what you think. Now, real quick before we move to number 9, Hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss a new video from us. And also, make sure to hit that like button. Number 9. Birmingham, Alabama. Birmingham, Alabama once stood at the heart of the civil rights movement. It's a city that carries the legacy of struggle and progress. Over the years, the city transformed from a predominantly white industrial hub to a place where black political power took root. Today, Birmingham is over 68% black, and that shift didn't happen without resistance. As black leadership started gaining ground in city government, policing, and education, many white residents decided to move out. They didn't just leave the city, they relocated to nearby suburbs like Hoover and Vestavia Hills. For them, it wasn't just about crime or economic decline, it was about cultural change. As Birmingham became more representative of its black population, some white residents felt uncomfortable and moved just far enough away to feel secure again. This pattern wasn't unique to Birmingham. It's a familiar story in many American cities where black leadership and cultural vibrancy are seen as reasons to move rather than reasons to stay. In Birmingham's case, it wasn't just about leaving behind the city. It was about moving toward a version of life that felt more controlled and familiar. But while many left, Birmingham didn't collapse. Instead, it's rebuilding itself with a strong sense of community and pride. Black-owned businesses are thriving, and cultural landmarks continue to shape the city's identity. The neighborhoods are alive with history, resilience, and a sense of revival. So the real question here is whether Birmingham was truly abandoned because it declined, or because some people couldn't handle its cultural transformation. Did they leave because the city fell apart, or because it just didn't feel like their city anymore? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Number 8. Newark, New Jersey. Newark, New Jersey was once a predominantly white working-class city, home to tight-knit Irish and Italian communities. You could walk down the street and see corner stores with sausage links hanging in the windows and churches on nearly every block. But things changed dramatically after the 1967 Newark Rebellion, a violent clash sparked by police brutality and racial tension. That event became the tipping point. As civil rights movements gained momentum, Newark's white residents decided it was time to leave. They packed up and moved to nearby suburbs like Livingston and West Orange, looking for a sense of security and familiarity. It wasn't just about the violence, it was about feeling like their city was no longer theirs. Once they left, the media quickly painted Newark as a dangerous and decaying place. Headlines focused on crime and unrest, while ignoring the cultural resilience and rebuilding efforts that were taking root. Instead of being seen as a city undergoing transformation, Newark was labeled as a lost cause. But that narrative doesn't capture the whole story. Today, Black and Latino residents are still here, still building community pride and creating a vibrant cultural scene. Newark has its struggles, sure, but it also has strength and a sense of identity that never left. Some may have abandoned Newark, but it was never truly lost. Black and Latino residents have continued to shape the city, fostering a sense of pride and community that stands strong despite the negative portrayals. Today, Newark's identity is rooted in resilience, culture, and a determination to thrive. It's a city that refuses to be defined by the narratives of those who left. Number 7. St. Louis, Missouri. Louis, Missouri used to be a booming city with a thriving economy, strong community ties, and a sense of unity. But over time, the city became starkly divided along racial lines. Today, North St. Louis, with a majority black population, stands in sharp contrast to affluent white suburbs like St. Charles. The turning point came as black residents began to gain political and economic power. Instead of embracing a more diverse city, many white families chose to move out, preferring the comfort and familiarity of the suburbs. It wasn't just about jobs or safety, it was about maintaining a sense of control. As integration became a reality, the white population started migrating to areas they perceived as more stable. This migration left North St. Louis underfunded and neglected. The disparity between the urban core and the suburbs became more pronounced, with resources flowing out as people left. Media portrayals often highlight crime in North St. Louis, but rarely address how systemic neglect and disinvestment have played a role. Despite these challenges, the community in North St. Louis remains resilient. Local leaders, businesses, and families continue to push for positive change, determined to reclaim the city's identity on their own terms. It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving despite being overlooked. North St. Louis proves that a strong community can endure even when the system tries to leave it behind. Number 6. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Milwaukee, Wisconsin was once a bustling industrial city with a predominantly white population. As factories thrived, so did the working-class neighborhoods that surrounded them. But starting in the mid-20th century, Milwaukee began to change. The Great Migration brought a significant increase in the black population as African Americans moved north, seeking jobs and better opportunities. Today, about 38.3% of Milwaukee's population is black. However, according to the National Association of Realtors, only 4% of Milwaukee area homebuyers last year were black, while 93% were white. This stark difference highlights the ongoing gap in housing opportunities and quality. As the black population grew, many white residents started leaving for the suburbs. Instead of staying and adapting to a more diverse community, they chose to relocate to areas that felt more familiar and insulated from change. This shift led to Milwaukee being labeled as one of the most segregated cities in the country, with a clear divide between black inner-city neighborhoods and predominantly white suburban areas. The media often portrays Milwaukee as economically struggling and riddled with issues, but that doesn't capture the whole story. The black communities in the city have maintained strong social networks and built a sense of cultural resilience that can't be ignored. Despite the disinvestment that followed white flight, these neighborhoods continue to fight for better resources, support local businesses, and foster community pride. Milwaukee's story isn't just about decline. It's about the strength to keep going even when the odds seem stacked against you. Black families here have built lives and legacies despite systemic neglect, proving that resilience can thrive even in the face of urban challenges. Number 5. Chicago, Illinois. Chicago, Illinois is known for its deep segregation, and that divide didn't happen by accident. Historically, the city was marked by a sharp contrast between the predominantly white north side and the predominantly black south and west sides. This split became even more pronounced during the Great Migration, when black families moved to Chicago seeking better opportunities. As black residents settled into urban neighborhoods, white families moved out, preferring suburban areas where they felt more comfortable. This trend became especially visible in neighborhoods like Englewood, which transformed into a predominantly black area. Instead of being seen as a thriving community, Englewood and similar neighborhoods were quickly labeled as dangerous. The media often focused on crime statistics without acknowledging the systemic neglect that followed white flight. This portrayal shaped public perception, making it easy for outsiders to blame the residents rather than the lack of investment and opportunity. Despite the negative portrayal, Chicago's black communities have maintained strong networks, rich cultural traditions, and a sense of pride. Englewood, for example, is more than just headlines. It's home to families, local businesses, and community leaders who continue to push for positive change. The narrative of crime often overshadows the stories of resilience and unity that define these neighborhoods. Number 4. Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis has long been a major cultural hub for Black Americans, especially as a center for blues and soul music. During the Great Migration, many black families moved to the city seeking job opportunities and a better quality of life. Today, Memphis is one of the blackest major cities in the United States. As of the most recent data, the city's population is about 64% black, compared to just 27% white. Over the decades, as the black population increased, many white residents moved to nearby suburbs such as Germantown and Collierville. Economic changes, urban desegregation, and an increase in black political and cultural influence led to white residents leaving the city core. Suburban development provided an attractive option for those seeking more homogeneous communities. As the city's demographics changed, Memphis was often portrayed as economically challenged, with media coverage frequently emphasizing crime and poverty. However, these portrayals often ignore the vibrant black culture that continues to define the city's identity. Today, Memphis remains a stronghold of black culture, with thriving local businesses, influential music scenes, and community-driven initiatives. Despite facing challenges related to investment and infrastructure, black communities in Memphis continue to shape the city's legacy and future. Number 3. Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore, Maryland has undergone a significant demographic shift since the 1960s, transforming into a majority black city. Once an industrial hub with a predominantly white working-class population, the city saw a major change as factories closed and job opportunities dwindled. At the same time, black residents, many of whom had moved north during the Great Migration, began to take on more prominent roles in local leadership and community life. As black political influence grew, many white residents started moving to nearby counties like Howard, Harford, and Anne Arundel. The migration wasn't just about jobs or crime, it was also driven by a discomfort with the city's changing identity. As Baltimore became more representative of its black population, suburban expansion provided a more familiar environment for those who wanted to leave the urban core. This departure had lasting effects. Investment in the city dropped significantly, and neighborhoods that once thrived with industrial jobs faced economic hardship. As white families left, so did funding and political focus, leading to infrastructure decline and reduced public services. Media narratives often framed Baltimore as a dangerous and decaying place, ignoring the deeper story of systemic neglect and economic divestment. But Baltimore's black communities have remained resilient. Cultural vibrancy thrives in the city's music, art, and activism. Neighborhoods like Upton and Sandtown Winchester are home to strong community networks and rich history, keeping Baltimore's unique spirit alive despite the challenges. The city's story isn't just one of decline. It's a testament to the enduring strength of communities that refuse to be defined by negative stereotypes. Number 2, Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi is the state capital and one of the blackest cities in the United States, with over 80% of its population identifying as black. Historically, Jackson was a center of civil rights activism and political change, as black leaders began to take on more significant roles in city government, schools, and public institutions. The city's demographic makeup started to shift even more. This transition wasn't without resistance. As black political empowerment grew, many white residents chose to leave, moving to suburban areas like Madison and Rankin County. The reasons went beyond just economic factors. There was a sense of discomfort with the city's new identity, and the suburbs offered a more familiar social landscape. This migration led to a pattern that's common in many southern cities. As white residents left, so did resources and investment. Suburban areas saw rapid growth and infrastructure improvements, while Jackson struggled with underfunded schools, deteriorating public services, and outdated infrastructure. The city's challenges were often framed as failures of leadership rather than the result of disinvestment tied to white flight. Despite this, Jackson's black communities remain resilient. Local businesses, community organizations, and cultural institutions continue to drive a sense of pride and purpose. Residents are actively working to rebuild and reclaim their city, focusing on preserving the rich cultural heritage that makes Jackson unique. While Jackson faces ongoing struggles related to funding and infrastructure, its spirit is defined by those who choose to stay and invest in their community. The city's story is one of both challenge and determination, proving that the people who remain are committed to making Jackson thrive. Number 1, Detroit, Michigan. In the early to mid-20th century, it was a predominantly white city, driven by the success of car manufacturing giants like Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. But as the auto industry began to decline, the city's demographics shifted dramatically. The trigger wasn't just the economic downturn. As black families moved to Detroit during the Great Migration, seeking factory jobs and a better life, white residents began moving out. Racial integration in neighborhoods and schools made some uncomfortable, and suburban development offered an alternative. Cities like Warren, Livonia, and Bloomfield Hills became the new destinations for those who wanted to leave behind Detroit's changing identity. This mass white flight left Detroit economically weakened. As the white population decreased, investment followed. Businesses relocated to the suburbs, tax revenues plummeted, and once thriving neighborhoods fell into decline. Media portrayals of Detroit focused on crime, decay, and poverty, often ignoring how the loss of industry and residents had set the city up for these struggles. But Detroit's story doesn't end there. Despite decades of disinvestment, black communities in Detroit have continued to build and rebuild. Black-owned businesses are making a comeback, and cultural institutions remain strong, preserving the city's rich musical and artistic heritage. The community-driven efforts to revitalize Detroit are proof that the city's spirit remains unbroken, even as it faces ongoing challenges. Detroit today stands as a symbol of resilience. It's a city where Black culture thrives despite years of neglect, and where new generations are working to restore the pride that made Detroit a cultural and industrial powerhouse. These cities aren't just stories of decline, they're stories of change, resilience, and community strength. The real question is whether these cities are struggling because they became majority Black, or if they're simply perceived that way because white residents left. Are they actually unsafe and undesirable, or is that just how they're framed when demographics shift? It's time to challenge the idea that a city becomes less valuable just because its population becomes more diverse. Too often, the narrative around these places is shaped by racial bias rather than reality. What we see instead are communities that keep pushing forward despite being labeled and neglected. They continue to build, create, and thrive, even when the odds seem stacked against them. If you found this video eye-opening, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the stories shaping our cities. See you in the next one.